Welcome back to the show. This is Shaun Spins, and I'm your host, Shaun, and this is episode 16. Hope everybody is safe and well. And what's going on? A commercial? We have a commercial break? Why do we have a commercial break?
This special episode of Shaun Spins is brought to you by Our Place, Pizzeria and Restaurante, a great place to go in Central Florida.
What was that? We're doing commercials now? I don't know. What do we got for today? An album from 1991. Good year. I actually have a drawing from that time. I did a drawing in 8th grade. And I'm pretty sure my teachers never caught me doing this drawing, but yet the drawing is a lot of my favorite bands at that time. It's interesting. So here's that drawing from 1991 when I was in 8th grade, maybe early 92. My classmates were into Paula Abdul, CNC Music Factory, Vanilla Ice, Poison, Color Me Bad. And as my dad said, he was very proud of this, I marched to my own drummer. My list has Led Zeppelin, The Doors, Primus, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Dinosaur Jr., U2, Guns N' Roses, Husker Du, The Pixies, Sex Pistols, Pink Floyd, Ecstasy, and The Misfits. Now, there's a couple bands on here I don't really listen to much anymore. Ecstasy, definitely. I think I stopped listening to them maybe in 8th or 9th grade. Sex Pistols, I don't really listen to them much anymore. Sex Pistols, however, was probably one of the first CDs I ever owned. Let's figure out the record we're doing from 1991. So, what album are we doing from 1991? No, I'm not doing Amy Grant. Baby, baby. I think my mom and my sister had that one. No, I'm not doing Mr. Big. I'm the one who wants... Oh, I'm sorry about that. No, I'm not doing Skid Row either. That's Sebastian Bach. He's still an asshole in my book. I remember that shirt he wore back in the day. What an ass. You know, my story with Skid Row too, I remember being younger than 91, probably 88, 89. So over at a friend of mine's house, she brought me in her room and said, I want you to listen to this album. And she put on a Skid Row album and got done playing one of the songs. And she said, what do you think? And I literally looked at her. She was all excited. And I might have been 10, 11 years old. And I looked at her and I said, I think it stinks. I was very happy in 1991 when Nirvana got very big. And a lot of the bands that were in that genre vanished for some time. And they weren't on television. They were just like, they vanished. Even the guitar magazines changed. You know, before Nirvana got really popular, the guitar magazine ads would be very sexist. And when Kurt got really big and all the other bands came along and what they in turn called grunge, a lot of things changed in the music industry. So we're not doing Skid Row. I recently was looking at an article and some person was trying to claim, well, you know, the music industry was different then when he was wearing that shirt. And I'm thinking, no, he's an asshole because Kurt Cobain was not like that. And a lot of people are not, including myself. So I'm going to need another clue. It's a band I saw live growing up. Oh, please don't be Kenny Rogers. Please don't be Kenny Rogers. You know, I think my mom only brought me to Kenny Rogers shows with the hope that when he was throwing tambourines in the audience that I might catch one. So I do remember I fell asleep at a Kenny Rogers show, and it was a really good sleep too. Probably one of the best I've had. And when we got home, my mom was really mad at me, and she was like, I am never taking you to a Kenny Rogers show again. And I remember my father kind of looking at me going, he figured it out. He figured out how to get kicked out of going to Rogers shows. Just fall asleep. So I never went to a Kenny Rogers show. And I don't think Kenny Rogers did a show in 1991 at that time or an album. Because I was much younger when I saw Kenny Rogers. I need another clue. What's all this cheese? Uh-oh. When the going gets tough and the stomach acids flow. Yep, we're doing a Primus album, Sailing the Seas of Cheese. Good album. Also from 1991. I was almost starting to think it might be the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I saw them, and they had an album come out in 91 too. Good album. Now, this Primus album came out earlier than a lot of the bands that really took off in 1991's albums came out. Similar to Nirvana, too. They already had an album before, yet Sailing the Seas of Cheese was the first big mainstream album. Well, let's get into that album and let's discuss why I like this album so much. What, we got another commercial? Another commercial? Come on!
Only one thing can control a kid as obnoxious as Doyle. And he just walked in the door.
I'm a friend of your mother's. I came to get you to bring you home.
Okay, sugar, what'll it be?
What won't make me vomit?
Nothing burps better than bacon.
You're disgusting.
Dutch.
See, I'm not such a bad guy, huh?
Rated PG-13.
You know that came out 30 years ago! You're a little late on that ad. It's a good movie, just a little late on that ad. Well, let's get into the album. So this Primus album came out in May of 1991. And as I was saying, a lot of the bands that ended up taking off from 1991 came out later in the year. Nirvana's Nevermind came out in 1991 in September, along with the Red Hot Chili Peppers' Blood Sugar Sex Magik, which was also their first on a major label. Then you get Soundgarden and Pearl Jam. R.E.M. was earlier in the year, and the Pixies, what I consider to be one of their best albums and what I consider to be their last album, came out in 1991 also. I almost went with that album because I've seen Kim Deal perform before with the Breeders. So this Primus album, you might be saying to yourself right now, Shaun, who in the world are Primus? Well, Primus is a three-piece band, the power trio. Yet to me, Primus, the driving force in Primus, is the bass playing from Les Claypool. And the whole band is phenomenal, but the bass playing always stuck out to me. It's one of those bands that the bass playing stuck out to me so much when I was learning how to play bass. A friend of mine would leave his bass at the house and I would mess around with it. I used to listen to Primus albums to learn and I'd play along with them. And I would also listen to Husker Du albums and play along to the bass. So there's some bands I go more towards the guitar playing and some bass. I'll tell you, Rage Against the Machine, good guitar playing, yet the drums really got me. And when I was learning how to play drums, I'd listen to Rage Against the Machine and play along with it. And you might be saying to yourself, Shaun, how did you get into this album? Doesn't seem like something you would find at the record store in the mall. Not necessarily. It's kind of like one of those bands like Tad and Mudhoney. You had to dig a little deeper, I would say. So this band came to me from a friend of mine in middle school. And his brother worked at an independent record store. So he'd get the albums from his brother, bring them in for us to listen to or make a cassette. So there's 2 times in my life he came to school super excited when we were in 8th grade. One time was for Smells Like Teen Spirit. Stopped me in the hallway, put a headset on my ears, in between classes. And I remember saying, can I borrow this? And it was probably September of 1991, and I took it home, and my sister had the only CD player in the house, and I went in her room, and I said, can we play this? And I put on Nevermind from Nirvana and Smells Like Teen Spirit. And the other time my friend came to school super excited was Primus. Ran up to me outside of school this time, put the headset on. You have to listen to this. And it was Jerry Was a Race Car Driver. It was amazing. Changed my life. I actually have a cassette tape that my friend made me at this time. It's a mixtape. Let's take a look. So here's the mixtape from my friend. Pretty simply done. No decoration, no artwork, didn't sign his name. And I love decorating mixtapes or mixed CDs. And this one's just simple to the point. Stuff on there, though. Couldn't find this at the neighborhood Kmart. You got Husker Du, which changed my life. when I got into high school, somebody came up to me maybe junior year and said, I heard you like Husker Du. I think we were the only two in the school. It's got Big Black on it, which introduced us to Steve Albini, Mudhoney, who I love, Jesus and Mary Chain, the Pixies, the Chili Peppers. It's got Ministry, the Misfits, Dinosaur Jr., it's got the Sex Pistols. It's got Nirvana singing School. Shows you how old this tape is. It comes from Nirvana's first album on Sub Pop, not from Nevermind. Nothing on there from Nevermind. This album, though, changed my life. It's very similar to when Buzz from the Melvins gave a mixtape to Kurt, introduced him to his stint to punk rock. Well, the stuff on here was not played on the radio. I mean, the closest thing to being on the radio at this time is some of the stuff from Mother's Milk from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Other than that, no, stuff wasn't on the radio, wasn't on MTV, so it was great to have. So I ended up getting the Primus CD for the holidays, and I remember it's probably one of the first CDs I had, maybe within the first 10, if not first 5, and I remember my dad was very embarrassed, and when I opened it that holiday season, I was all like, oh, and my dad, I remember him yelling out, he goes, picture walking into a store asking, I'm looking for Sailing the Seas of Cheese. And everybody's looking at me like, what? And what always struck me funny about that was, to me, the album cover and the music reminded me very much of a band that my dad loved, which was Frank Zappa and the Mothers. In particular, just another band from LA that was his favorite and we grew up listening to all the time. Even the artwork on the cover has a similar look to Primus with the animated claymation kind of look, and the music is pretty similar. It can get kind of strange. I mean, Frank Zappa, call all the vegetables, la 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 la. The vegetables will respond to you. Hoo, hoo, la 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 la. So, on the Primus album, you have one track where it's someone singing in the shower like a grandparent. And that track kind of reminds me of Quinn from Jaws singing like la 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 la. So I always thought it was interesting. My father kind of seemed embarrassed, but I don't know why. Frank Zappa to me, no different. Maybe that's why I was ready for Primus. Because not only with Primus do you get phenomenal musicians, you get that little level of just neat kind of music. It's different. Kind of like jazz, a little bit of everything. I believe also this CD was the last I ever got that was in a long box. The long boxes so they could go into the cabinet that the records used to go. Yet we were always told at the store that it was to prevent theft because it's kind of hard to walk out with this giant box with a CD. But the long box CDs, they disappeared in the early 90s because of the waste they produced. I don't remember ever seeing this on record when I was growing up. CDs were king and queen at this time in the 90s. Anytime people always say, what records were you collecting in the 90s? You know how hard it was to find records in the 90s that were brand new? The records I was collecting in the 90s were stuff from the 60s and 70s and a little later. We didn't have a lot of records in the 90s that came out. It was CDs, cassettes, later on mini disc. Now, a couple interesting things about this album. The photographer on the back, Michael Levine, he took a lot of images of bands at that time, and they all have that very similar studio look. Another thing interesting about this is the use of cursive writing, not only on the title tracks, the title of the album, but inside the booklet too. And it's funny having a background in advertisement, we're always told to stay away from cursive writing because it could be hard to read. That gives a little bit of an artistic, creative outlook here, though, that's pretty interesting. Now, for the album itself, I love this album. All of it. It starts off with that track I was singing a little bit in the beginning, that the little like boom, 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 and it just gets you into the album, and then it goes right into Here Comes the Bastards. One of my favorite tracks is Sgt. Baker. And why Sgt. Baker is one of my favorite tracks is I had a similar situation happen to me a couple years later after this album came out, that I was thinking about joining the military. And I went with a friend of mine a couple times to meet with a recruiter. And then one time they took us to go take a test. One of the times he was taking us somewhere, he started yelling at this woman outside the car and was tremendously rude to her. The way he was describing her and the way he was talking. And I remember saying to a friend of mine, I don't want to end up like that guy. And I didn't want to be in the military anymore. And it reminded me of the song Sergeant Baker. And when I got home, I listened to the song Sergeant Baker again. I went, yep, I think I just met Sergeant Baker. But song after song is just great. Now, to me, one of my favorite songs on it was Jerry Was a Race Car Driver. I remember how excited we would get for that middle part when he just yells, go! And, oh, man. Now, a friend of mine, his favorite track on here was Tommy the Cat, which is an amazing track. The whole thing is great. Like, the whole thing. It's just amazing. I can't recommend it enough. Now, as I said earlier, to me, the big part of it was the bass playing. It's a phenomenal album. Now, you might be saying to yourself right now, Shaun, didn't you say you saw this band live? I did, 1995. And I finally found some proof of it on YouTube recently. Let's go to the proof. This looks like my room growing up. Now, when I say proof, nobody believed me when I would tell them about the crowd. And here's the crowd right here. Mind you, this is in between bands. There's no music being played and they're still crowd surfing. I got my ticket at Sears, went with a friend of mine. We got there from my dad. When we got in there, Helmet was the first band. Some of the most intense moshing I ever seen in my life. There was people being taken out on stretcher boards and neck protection. I remember one person looked like Gigi Allen and El Duque, and he was hitting everybody, and he was coming at me and my friend, and I remember I had to hit him to get him away from us. When Primus came out, it just, I think the moshing went down a little bit, yet people were throwing things at the band. I kind of remember the band saying, we're going to stop if you keep this up. Next thing I know, the show ended. I thought the show ended because it was time for it to end. I realized quite quickly when we left, when there was a ton of police out there with shields and police helicopter with the light shining on us, that we were being forced out of the venue. And I particularly remember walking up with my friend and my dad, and he had this look of, what happened to the two of you? As I said, it had to be one of the most intense shows I've ever been to in my life. I think the next show like this for me was probably when I saw Rage Against the Machine. Yeah, it was something. Now, you might still be saying, well, how do we know you were there? What proof do you have? You could have just taken that video off of YouTube. Well, I actually have a photograph of myself and the ticket in the newspaper article. Go to the proof! So this picture was taken of me the next morning. I'm still wearing the Primus shirt I got at the show. It looks like I went through a prize fight. I have my ticket here. You gotta love that it was under $20. Why can't all concerts be like that? And then we got the newspaper article from that concert. The crowd acts up. It was an intense show, to say the least. So what are my final thoughts on Primus Sailing the Seas of Cheese? It's a great album. It's probably one of my top 10 in my life. It's got rock. It's got punk. It's got jazz. It's got a Frank Zappa feel. You put it all together with 3 great musicians, and you got Primus. I said to you earlier, too, when I was learning how to play bass, I would play along to this album and the next couple from Primus. Now, eventually, I might get a vinyl reissue. Yet the CD is really special to me because that's how I got it. To this day, I don't know where my father got it. I don't know if he was able to get it at a mainstream store like in the mall. Something tells me he had to go to like an independent store. And I'll just always remember him feeling embarrassed saying the name of it, which I don't know why, because like I said, he was into Frank Zappa. The first time I think I saw Primus at a mainstream store was like 1994, 95, like at a Best Buy. Yet this album's way before that, so I think my dad got it at an independent store. I had heard recently that Primus is coming to town here to do a show. I do not think it'll be like the one I went to years ago. Nowadays, there's signs, no stage diving, no moshing. And most time people sit kind of quiet at some of these venues. Sit still and watch the music and listen to it. That show I went to, not a lot of people were sitting. And there was no pogoing. It was some serious, dangerous moshing and crowd surfing. And at 17, I remember it was a little scary to see that many people being taken away with boards. They're all laying on boards and they have neck braces on. And I don't even know if anyone was seriously injured at the show. I don't remember the newspaper article talking about it. I do remember they set up a triage area, almost like MASH unit, towards the back of the stage where the snack bar area hallway was. Because I remember you'd have to walk past everyone being triaged to go to that area. And I imagine from there they would go out to the back if there was a paramedic. And I'm not lying to you when I say this. It had to be probably close to 50, if not more people I saw getting taken away on boards. Like I said, it looked like something out of a MASH unit, like taken away on these things. And I hope everybody was fine after that, yet it was really dangerous. The only other show I've seen that dangerous is a Rage Against the Machine show I went to with the Wu-Tang Clan and Atari Teenage Riot. It was outside and it was lightning at one point. And then at one point there were some chairs that were in concrete and metal poles and people were ripping them out of it and throwing them. And talk about dangerous. That'll be the next show. I have to find proof of it on YouTube. When I found this Primus show, I said, finally I have some proof, because when I would tell people the story, I don't think anyone believed me. That I still thought it was interesting that I didn't know we were being like thrown out of it until I got outside with the helicopter and all the police and the shield. And I was like, oh, we're being forced out. What's that? We got one more ad? From Russ Shaw. Yeah, Russ Shaw did a nice little ad for us on his channel. If you get a chance, check out Russ Shaw's channel. Talks about two of my favorite things, cars and music. Yeah, two of my favorite things. So until next time, I hope everybody's safe and well, and be nice to each other, and let's go to that ad now.
Also, Shaun Spins. He's another channel that you should subscribe to if you like the vinyl content. Shaun does a great job. He's got less than 100 subscribers, infotained by his channel as well. I added him to my featured channels amongst the other stuff, adding some more vinyl stuff to the automotive featured channels on my channel. But he does straight up really good record reviews and great stuff. Anyway, let's move on.